What's up, Lantern fans? It's the Emerald Enthusiast, the co-host of the Emerald Echo podcast. Here with a look at the Hasbro DC Superheroes Action Figure 2-pack of Dr. Polaris and Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner. Let's have a look at the packaging. On the bottom front, it says Green Lantern versus Dr. Polaris. DC Superheroes at the top. There is the DC Comics logo. Once again, it says Green Lantern versus Dr. Polaris, and likewise on the bottom. There's a product shot of each of the action figures on this side, and the same shot on the opposite side. On the back, we get full-body product shots, as well as a description of the clash between Dr. Polaris and Green Lantern. Here's a close-up of that write-up that includes biographical details of Kyle Rayner and Dr. Polaris, as well as their rivalry. If you'd like to read this, pause the video and do so now. This is a 1999 release, and on the front it says for ages 4 and up, and that means that I qualify. So now it's time to bust these figures out of the package and see what's inside. Here are the figures free of the outer packaging, but still bound to the inner cardboard tray. And an obvious area of criticism is that the figures come with no accessories. With Dr. Polaris, I would have liked anything that represented metal, like a lamppost. With Kyle, I would have appreciated the personal power battery, if not the personal power battery and a construct. And here we see Dr. Polaris and Kyle Rayner out of the package and ready to rumble. These figures are a product of their time, which means that they have both nostalgic charm as well as some severe limitations when it comes to articulation. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the loose details of these figures now. Let's start with a look at Neil Emerson, aka Dr. Polaris. And there's a lot to like about this figure in terms of appearance. There's a lot of really bright colors here. One thing I was surprised by is this cape is detachable. And initially I thought that the glue had just loosened up and it had come off by mistake. But I don't think that's the case. It actually just lifts off. It's easy to snap back on as well. There's lots of good sculpting here. It's fairly pliable. In terms of the figure itself, I really do like the boots, as well as this metallic finish on the silver sections of the costume. This costume is pretty accurate to the costume that we saw Dr. Polaris wear in Volume 3. Although the body mold is massive. He has these huge lats in the back. You can see just how gigantic those are. This is a very stylized figure. I really appreciate the exposed pointer finger and pinky finger. That is accurate to Green Lantern Volume 3, number 59. That's a story called Green Christmas. Although by the time he showed up in Underworld Unleashed, he just had more basic gloves. The shoulder sections of the armor are molded to the arms. I really appreciate these sculpted gold portions of the costume. Obviously, again, you see he has this massive back. There's plenty of detail back there. There's also lots of detail here on the mask. I really like this. It's not too brittle. It doesn't seem like it'll break easily. Here's a look at the hair. That's actually really well sculpted. Hasbro did an excellent job in sculpting the mask to look like the comics. The figure has 5 points of articulation, including the hips here, and you can see just how far backward and forward you can get the legs to move. So I do appreciate that. There's no movement at the knees or elbows, although you can get the arms to do a 360 at the shoulder joint. The hands do not rotate, and the head sculpt moves side to side, and there's no up and down motion. Now let's have a look at Kyle, and I really like this armored look except for one area. I appreciate the musculature on the black sections, and I like that glossy finish. The figure does have portholes in the bottom of his feet. These figures don't stand well, but you can take a lot of peg bases and they do fit. Obviously, this is a McFarlane peg base. There's plenty of good sculpting on this. It actually does look like armor. So I really appreciate the sculpting detail on the green sections. However, I will say that I wish they would have used a more metallic green or a more vibrant green. Here we see the 90s Kyle logo that was designed by Darryl Banks. That feels like it could rub off if you handle it too often, so take care there. This is definitely not a great head sculpt. The head is a little oblong for my taste, even for a stylized figure, and I'm not a huge fan of this wraparound mask. However, I really appreciate the way this ring was executed, especially considering the time period and how small this area is. This is an amazing effort here, so I'm very thankful for that. Overall, I just really like how unique this look is for Kyle. So the articulation is very limited, even in comparison to Dr. Polaris. Now, the legs move at the hips in a pretty similar fashion. However, the arms are hindered by the armor. As you can see, you cannot get them to do a 360. Again, it's quite a shame that he doesn't have a lantern for this gripping hand. But the real issue I have with articulation here is with the head. I don't know if every figure is like this, but there's barely any side-to-side movement. Perhaps the plastic and paint have fused partially over time, but that's certainly disappointing. And now some final thoughts on this 2-pack. I see a lot of Green Lantern fans online who collected this Total Justice line when they were children. And now that they're adults, they decide to give their figures to their children or their nieces and nephews. In terms of play, the Total Justice line was more durable than the collector-centric DC Direct figures that came shortly thereafter. Despite their age, I don't think that these would break easily. In terms of being an adult collector, I still think there's a lot of appeal here. This 2-pack has an energetic, clean look to it, and it's not too difficult to track down. Don't let any sellers take you for a ride by suggesting that the age of this 2-pack makes them very valuable. You can find these two figures for around $25. And for that price, I definitely think that they're worth it. I certainly hope you have enjoyed this review. If so, please like and subscribe. Stay tuned for some articulation shots, and also remember to catch me on the Emerald Echo podcast, which is part of Multiverse Musings, the vidcast, and that's available right here on YouTube. And I'll be back with more Green Lantern-related content soon. But until we meet again, this has been the Emerald Enthusiast, and thanks for watching.